I originally was born in South Caicos, and as a boy growing up, I one of the islands that I traveled to pretty regularly was Middle Caicos because I had formed strong family connection there. Um, but in South Caicos, life was just simple. As boys, we couldn't play with girls, number one. Secondly, we did things like play marbles. We flew kites. We would go fishing together. There was more a sense of strong community, right? All the boys basically did things together, and especially those who live in like the same neighborhood. Earlier in my well, during my boyhood days, we didn't have electricity in South Caicos. We didn't get electricity until 1964. So we did those kind of activities, like after school, playing marbles. Of course, we got into fights too. I mean, there was hardly anything to do. But at nights, most of the people on the island had lamps. Um, some had tile lamps, some had the regular oil lamps. Just one or two businessmen had generators which serviced their business or their home, and they would run it for part of the day, but at usually around 10 o'clock at nights, they would shut it off. So we would play around those areas where we had at nights where we had lighting. But by 8 o'clock, you had to be home. And what we would do at nights with boys is that we had what we call a winder. It was a long strip, and we would, like I lived on the hill. We had a group of guys, say the area, the old field, the Gulf, and other areas. When we came together, or we would go down in the Gulf and look for guys in the Gulf and beat them with. So that's the. But you had regulations. You could only hit the person from the waist downward. You're not on the upper parts of the body or the face. So I hardly got any licks because I was a sprinter, so they couldn't catch me. You had to run the guy down. And there was one guy in particular I would always earmark. It was Simeon Seymour. I was telling his son about it incidentally today, how he was short and fat, so he could hardly run. So we targeted him a lot, right? But those were some of the things that we did during the day. Those were some of the things that we did during the night. And then you had your school to attend to. And one of the critical things was that parents during that day, everyone was your parent. Because I think you've heard the stories that anybody could discipline you. And there were, even if you saw a police in the distance or pastor, you would never, unless you have to, you would find the closest exit because you didn't want to meet that individual face to face. And the society was so structured that if a parent saw you out at 8 o'clock, if you were not going a message, you would be reported. They would report you to your parents because after 8 o'clock, you were not supposed to be seen outside. And uh, there was the mornings, some like 3 days out of the week, we have the main public tank, which was the government main tank that distributed water, fresh water, rainwater. We didn't have running water, so we had to depend on that. You go to the public tank, you had to get your bucket, go to the public tank, make at least 2 to 3 trips. The public tank was probably about a mile from my house, and you have to bring enough water to fill your drum, and that drum would normally last you for a week. That water was only for drinking. Then we had to go. There was Basin Well, a popular well in South Caicos, which was only about 5 to 10 minutes walk from where I lived. We had to go there. You were not ashamed because all the boys in the communities had to do the same thing, right? And so we used the basin, the well water, like to wash clothes. And I was telling Terry a while ago that you could only bathe on Sundays. We had something that we call wipe off, where you dip the towel in the water and you just you take off all your clothes and then you just wipe yourself. For Sunday, you go into the tub and you get your bath, because Sunday, every child had to go to Sunday school. Every child had to go to church. And one of the fascinating things is that during Easter time, and particularly during Christmas time, that was when your parents would buy you your new brand clothes, as we call it, and you go off and you show your clothes, show off your new shoes, your new socks, and so forth. But Sundays was a special day. That, and that is when your mom made a chicken, which was quite fascinating. You had to um, you had to go in the yard. We call it yard fowl. You didn't have no IGAs, and my uncle had a store, and one or two other people had a store. We had Turks here that came and was brought food items from Florida. But I grew up, we ate eggs that were from our own fowls or chickens, and we ate a rooster on a Sunday, or once we had sufficient, but we made sure that we had sufficient stock to keep us going. So some people, I know on a few occasions we had our own pig, and when you kill your pig, that was another big thing. So, we normally do it on a Saturday, and we go to the slaughterhouse. We called it the cow house, which was down on Congran Bay. So and all the communities would come, all members of the communities would come down there to see that activity, because there was hardly anything that was happening, right? And the same thing, Mr. Housewell Jennings and his group would go to Sail Rock to shoot a cow. They would normally do it. They would normally do it on a Saturday, because very few people had refrigerators, so you had to cook the meat. The parents would give you a little bit that Saturday night, but and Sunday you had your pork or your beef, and then once you had a yard fowl or a chicken, you could also have your own chicken at that date. So you were growing your own animals. There were some people who had their own animals. Some people had hogs. Some people had cows. They got the cows from Haiti and so forth. But like I said, there were these men who would also go to East Caicos to shoot a cow. So that was basically life growing up. And I saw that evolve from lamps to electricity. I think we got electricity like in the 70s, but there was a company in South Caicos called Caicos Company. There's a group from America. When they set up the Admiral's Arms in 1964, then they provided electricity they started providing electricity to people, and eventually the government took it over.